Anybody just joining us right now, sorry for the delay for those of you who clicked in an hour ago, but due to the variety of circumstances, including confusion of time zones all over the place, because we're coming to you from Toronto, from Texas, as well as from San Francisco. And those of you who are listening in Israel, as you know, it's 8 hours earlier here. So without any further ado, we're going to start another episode with a special guest tonight. It's the Never Again live podcast series. And this time we really will begin momentarily as opposed to an hour from now. Without any further ado, let's count down to start. Once again, this is the Never Again Live podcast brought to you by IsraelNow.ca. Tonight's episode is going to be confronting, combating BDS, as well as all the other things going on, particularly in Israel these days, with our special guest we'll introduce more formally a little later in the program. You can join us Sunday evenings, occasionally Wednesday evenings, occasionally surprise times, anytime. So just be on our website or on our YouTube page or our Facebook page to see what our next episodes may be and who will be our guests. I'm Dr. B in the studio down here in South Texas, deep in the heart of Texas. We like to think of Texas as the other Lone Star State. There are two Lone Star States. We've got Israel and we've got Texas. We've got the Alamo and Masada. Our special guest this evening is a Brigadier General, reservist Amir Avivi. He's the founder of the Protectors of Israel. Please do go to their website and join them. It's basically a movement comprised of over 4,000 high-ranking reservists, retired officers, commanders, and warriors of the Israeli Defense Force. Find them at idsf.org.il. Don't forget the .il part. General Avivi has had a variety of positions, and most importantly, he was right there cutting edge, as was at the heart of policy making in the Israeli government as well as the Israeli defense establishment. We look forward to hearing his comments later. The IDSF mission includes ensuring that Israel's security in the homeland of the Jewish people is never taken for granted. And at the core lies the belief that Israel's security must be anchored to its ability to protect itself by itself. We can't depend on everybody else. We've known that for thousands of years. We have need to depend on ourselves. Einstein said the world's a dangerous place, not because of those who do evil, but because of those who look on and do absolutely nothing. And here at IsraelNow.ca, we don't sit around and do nothing. We're active, we're proactive. Please join us, watch us, share us, because only together as a group can we fight anti-Semitism. And we'll have Meir with the Parsha of the week. And here's Meir. With Parsha Korach. Meir, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm asking everyone if you could please share this with your various platforms that you use, be it Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, other social media platforms. Reach a lot more people, have a stronger impact. There's a lot going on right now in the Jewish world. There's an upsurge of anti-Semitism all over the place. There's an Islamic conference that's going to be taking place next weekend here in Toronto, a major conference, and lots of the speakers, a lot of there. Call for action of Israel, open anti-Semitism, targeting of synagogues. There's it's been in the Jewish media anyways, an issue with, it's called the Mapping Project, targeting synagogues right now and Jewish organizations and Jewish individuals in the Boston area right now. And that's going to be expanded because BDS groups throughout North America are promoting it. It's called the Mapping Project. That's a little meme that we have, and we've talked about that before on the show. The Parsha this week, it's it's very important. Every Parsha is important, but the lessons from this one, Parsha's Korach. And Parsha's Korach, there was an individual, extremely wealthy Jewish man, had a lot of power, Korach. And he organized a rebellion against Moses, the Jewish leader. Moses, who spoke to God, received the Torah for the Jewish people. He came down to give it to the Jewish people, transmit it, to explain it to the Jewish people. And Korach said, "Who are you?" He belittled the stature of Moses and what he stood for. And it wasn't enough that he was extremely wealthy, Korach, but that wasn't enough for him. He wanted that honor, that respect that Moses had. We see what's going on in Israel right now, and I don't really like getting into the politics in Israel because although I just came back from Israel, I had to rush here to Toronto to attend the funeral, and then I'm going to be attending a wedding, and then I'm going back to Israel to establish my home in Israel. It's taken all these years, but and that's where Jews should be. But you know, my life has been devoted to defending Jews against anti-Semitism through protests, through a lot of different means. Be it when we went after Nazi war criminals years ago, and neo-Nazis, and Ernst Zundel, and various teachers that were promoting Hitler in the classroom. And now we have the BDS, and we've taken stands against that. In Israel, in the previous elections and the coalition government led by Naftali Bennett, there seems to be almost like this left-wing ideology, and I don't even know if you could really call it that, an acceptance of BDS, that if you question it, if you say something against it, you're called a racist. That kind of language has been used in Israel for the past year. And I have seen, since I was in Israel, the past 2.5 months, 3 months, that because of this particular type of coalition, and those are the words I'm using, Arabs in Israel felt free to go out there to various universities and hold PLO flags. They felt emboldened by this particular coalition. There were terrorist attacks in Israel, serious terror attacks, and there were celebrations in Gaza and in other places in Judea and Samaria and Arab communities, celebrations taking place. We had the issue of an Arab reporter from Al Jazeera in Jenin who was covering a story where the Israeli army were going in pursuit of terrorists that had what to do with these terrorist attacks. And there was fire going back and forth from the IDF soldiers and terrorists. And a journalist gets killed. In the past 30 years, there's been over 2,600 journalists killed in similar circumstances in the war zones and conflict zones. But only Israel is targeted, and the line is that Israel planned it, premeditated it, had no right to be in Jenin. This is pure anti-Semitism. We're going to be discussing Israel and anti-Semitism tonight, the BDS. We have an expert with us, years of experience, Brigadier General Amir Avivi. It's a show. I want to welcome him to the show, and he could explain. He's done so much research, as well as putting himself on the line for the Jewish people, for Israel. It's a pleasure to have you with us tonight. How are you?
Thank you. It's an honor to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Amir, you put together a study recently. I mean, it's not the only study you put together, but there was a research paper that you presented, and it had to do with Arabs in Israel. That I think you said in the organization that approximately 75% of Arab Israelis do not accept the right of the Jewish people to a state in the land of Israel, and about 25% of the Arab population in Israel said that they would, if there was a war against Israel, they would join it. I assume that's a younger aspect of the Arab in Israel that says that, because the older ones won't necessarily. That's just assuming. Can you explain the study? Explain, challenges going on in Israel right now.
Well, actually, it was more than a study. It was a survey, a national survey we did, and we asked questions that simply were not asked before. The Arab society. We asked straightforward questions. And what we learned from this survey is that about a quarter of the Israeli Arab society that has been part of Israeli economy, doctors and professors and so on, a quarter of the Israeli Arab society feel part of the society. 50% of the Israeli Arab society, they are sitting on the bench looking who will prevail, and that's conveying a simple message. As long as you are strong, resolute, united, we'll live our lives as civilians. But in a case where, the shift of power will come to be, we might change our position. And then there is this 25%, which are Islamistic, which are nationalistic, which side with Hamas and terrorist ideologies. And they are saying clearly, I mean, we will fight. Maybe we're not doing that actively at the moment, because at the end of the day, people are afraid to go to jail, to get arrested or maybe killed. But definitely this part of society is not in favor at all of Israel. Now, the vast majority say, we don't want a Jewish state. We want a state like, the United States, where it's simply a democracy and citizens, but no Jewish identity. And I must tell you, it doesn't come as a surprise, that the Arabs would rather not have a Jewish state.
Where does the Ram Party fit into this? I've read statements from leaders of the Ram Party. They pulled out temporarily from the when there was a lot of action, a lot of activity on the Temple Mount. There were Hamas rallies there, and then there were some Jews that were going there, as there always have been throughout the years. There's no they're pretty quiet, the Jews that go up there, and they're not creating disturbances, not engaged in any violence or anything. But I saw these Hamas rallies there, and I saw that the Ram Party stepped away, and they wanted to make conditions on the Bennett coalition for coming back, that they wanted Israel to forbid Jews going up to the Temple Mount. How does the Ram Party fit into this survey?
Well, we had the whole survey about the Ram Party. We prepared this survey even before this government was formed, and our message was really clear. Ram Party is Muslim Brotherhood ideology. They are affiliated to Hamas. They are connected to Hamas. They have Hamas ideology. They are no different than the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, Hamas, or Muslim Brotherhood in Afghanistan or in other places. They completely reject the existence of a Jewish state. They are a radical religious organization. And one of the ways the Muslim Brotherhood operates is trying to infiltrate into the government. So on one hand, they educate to hate Jews, they educate against a Jewish state, and so on. On the other hand, they speak softly and say, we want to be part of the government. And then when they get the funds, they say to the Arabs in Arabic, we are getting hold of the land, we are taking the land from the Jews, and so on. And we rejected completely my organization, that is composed of more than 4,000 Israeli high-ranking officers and commanders and so on. We said clearly that having a minority Jewish government that is dependent on its existence on the Muslim Brotherhood, this goes against any values of Zionism. This is not Zionism. Zionism is about having a clear majority Zionist government that can conduct Zionist policy. You cannot have a Zionist policy when you are dependent on your existence on a Muslim Brotherhood party or any Arab party for that matter. So I'm not saying that we are against any notion of Arabs being in the government. We're not against that. But first and foremost, you need to have a majority, clear majority of Zionist Jewish party, and then you can check whether the relevant Arab party is a partner or not, does recognize our right to exist or not, and then decide.
There's an Arab Israeli activist. He served in the Golani Brigades. Yosef Haddad. He goes around. He advocates for Israel. He confronts the BDS. In fact, he attended a meeting in the Knesset where members of not the Ram, I don't believe the Ram party, but Ahmed Tibi's party were calling him a traitor. I mean, I wish the Arabs that would I guess a minority in Israel could be people like Yosef Haddad that accept Israel as a Jewish state and will fight for Israel and will advocate for Israel. But when you have members of the Knesset that will call him a traitor and put a target on his back, how many Yosef Haddads do you think are in Israel?
Well, first of all, we have the Druze minority, which
right.
Are part of the Jewish Israeli society. They serve in the army. I can tell you that many of the members in my organization are Druze. I have 4 Druze generals in my organization and many other officers. So the Druze society is definitely supporting the Jewish state. Among the Arab society, I would say that the Arab Christian society is getting closer and closer to the Jewish society because they're persecuted by the Muslim society. And in the Israeli Arab Muslim society, as I told you, I think there is maybe 20% of the people that are willing to be part of a Jewish state. Are not necessarily very supportive, but they accept it. They accept the fact that this is a Jewish state, and the vast majority would like something else. Would like either a Muslim state or not a Jewish state.
Right, that's there, and I've seen that, and I've seen also Arabs coming to work in Israel with shirts that have an M16 on it. That seems to be a new
Let me cut in for 1 second. Amir, do me a favor. Tell our audience a little more about your organization, because I don't think that they're quite familiar with how active and who it consists of. So just take a minute and just tell us about the IDSF.
Okay, so 2 years ago, after I retired from the army, I decided to start a new organization of Israeli high-ranking officers, commanders, ex-warriors, all of them, of course, in reserve or retired. And the mission we took upon ourselves is to ensure Israel's existence and prosperity for generations to come. So basically, we are asking a very important and simple question: what will ensure Israel's existence for the long term? And we are talking about never again. We have been expelled twice from our land. We have been persecuted for thousands of years. Finally, we have a state. And the big question is, how do we make sure that it continues to exist? And this cannot be taken for granted. It's not granted that Israel will be around if we don't do the right things. And I've seen in my many years of service, decision-making that truly endangers the existence of Israel. So we understood that there needs to be a very dominant, strong organization in the public sphere, but also talking to decision makers that will make sure that this Zionist project stays on the right track and doesn't derail. And we asked ourselves, okay, so we understand what we want to do, but how do we do it? And the way we are doing it is doing three main things, both in Israel and also within the diaspora. One, and maybe the most important one, is educating the young generation. There is a huge, huge gap of understanding, of connection to our Jewish and Zionistic values among the young generation. We see it in Israel, in the education system. We also see it, of course, in the communities around the world. People have forgot how special we are, what the people of Israel are all about, and how important is our nation and our land and so on. And they're simply not educated in the right way. So we are deploying thousands. We have thousands of officers that we are deploying into the education system, in the pre-army programs, and soon also in communities around the world to really reinvigorate Zionism, to bring back the pride Jews should have about their identity and about their nation and state. And of course, also give the tools to understand our national security needs for the long term. So one thing is education. The other thing, we know that we live in a world that is shaped by media and social media. So we are very, very active on media and social media. We started, of course, first of all in Israel. Today in Israel, we are very dominant on these platforms. We interview every day on national TV, and we're active on social media. Now, lately, we also opened the public relations department, an international one, so we can bring our voice also to Canada, the States, and other places. And the last thing is working with decision makers. We have a growing research department, very dominant. We are working with decision makers in Israel, in the States, in Europe. Our voice is an authoritative voice, and people want to hear it and want to know what we think about different issues. And we deal with all major issues of national security that have to do with the prosperity and existence of the state of Israel and the Jewish people.
Let me ask you. So Israel has, for years already, a policy of what's it called? Manage the conflict. That's what they call it. I mean, I'm sure it evolves every year by year as there's different challenges. But I mean, I gotta throw this question at you. There may be 5 million Jews living in diaspora, living in the United States and Canada, something like that, around that, give or take. Could be a little higher, could be a little lower. How would the policy of managing the conflict change or be affected if, let's say, 1.5 million Jews moved to Israel right away, or 2 million Jews moved to Israel right away? How would that change the dynamic in Israel, the threats that Israel faces?
Well, first of all, Mayor, you're touching the most important thing Israel needs. Israel needs only one thing: Jews. That's it. You know, many times when I meet communities and Jews around the world, and many people want to help and assist the state of Israel, and they ask me, how can I help? And I say, listen, Israel doesn't need anything. It needs one thing: Jews. You want to help? Make Aliyah. Come to Israel. This is the real fight we have, to have a clear, vast majority in the land of Israel, a growing majority. It's very important, and will strengthen dramatically everything. It strengthens the economy, it strengthens the army, it strengthens, of course, the amount of votes Jews have, the government. It affects everything. And Zionism has understood it from the very first day. Zionism is all about Jews coming to live and build their nation in the land of Israel. That's Zionism, basically. And so this is very important. Now, you mentioned, Meir, something very important, and it's true. The policy in the last decade or two was trying to keep things as calm as possible, not shake the boat too much, in order to have tourism, in order to grow the economy, and buy time. But with this policy, what we have seen in the last 2 decades is a constant growth of two major threats. One is the Iranian threat, and the Iranian threat is not just Iran and its growing capabilities, talking about them trying to achieve have nuclear weapons. It's also about the huge buildup of force they are doing around Israel, with Hezbollah, with more than 100,000 rockets and mortars and missiles and drones. Yemen, with the Houthis, Iraq, Hamas in Gaza. Iran is building a huge force around Israel, and it's building it for war. It's not building it for fun. Okay, right. They are building a force in order to attack Israel at a certain stage where they feel they are ready enough. And what will make them feel ready is 3 main capabilities. One is the nuclear capability. The other one is the amount of missiles they have, because missiles are very accurate, are very hard to shoot down, and they want enough missiles so they can shoot Israeli Air Force bases and headquarters and so on. And also when they feel they have enough drones. In Lebanon, for example, until a decade ago, you had something like 50 drones. Now Hezbollah has more than 2,000. So this capability is growing seriously, and we have seen how difficult it was for the US Army to deal with the drone attacks in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's not a simple issue to deal with. And we've seen the drone attacks also on Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, and the level of destruction that this capability can achieve. So one thing is this Iranian buildup of force. It has been going on for a long time, but now it achieved a certain level of readiness that makes it much more dangerous. You cannot just continue and buy time with the Iranians. You need to be proactive. The other thing is that we have been buying time talking about the Palestinian threat. Now, the Palestinian threat today, it's not only Hamas, it's not only the Palestinian Authority that seeks the destruction of Israel, just like Hamas. It's also this part of the Israeli Arab society that is working with Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. And basically, we see a Palestinian campaign all over the land of Israel and trying to achieve 3 main things. One is acting like Zionism has acted for many years, grabbing land, taking the land. So they are taking our land in Judea and Samaria. They are taking the land in the Negev. They are doing that in the Galil and in the mixed cities. And this is maybe the biggest threat Israel is facing. Illegal takeover of the land. Now, it's not that we are not dealing with it well enough. We're not dealing with it at all. I mean, they're taking all of our land, all of our country, and we're not doing anything. We're not countering that. The other thing is destabilizing completely the sense of security of Jews anywhere in Israel. So you see it on the roads of Judea and Samaria, but you also see it in the Negev, with the Bedouins terrorizing the Jews in Beersheba, in Dimona, in other places. You see it in the Galil. You see it very clearly in the mixed cities, like Lod, like Acre. You see it in Jerusalem. It's all around. And the last thing, this is classic, classic BDS stuff, is completely destroying our basic right to have a state in the land of Israel. Today, when you talk about the Palestinians campaigning and the BDS, and the BDS is the Palestinians. The BDS is the Palestinian terror organizations in another form. They are the ones operating BDS. And BDS is saying Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. So if it's from the sea to the Jordan Valley, where is Israel exactly in this scenario? Nobody today is talking about two-state solution. People are talking about the complete destruction of the state of Israel, of the Jews, throwing them to the sea. This is what is going on. And in these two issues, when we are talking about Iran and we are talking about this full-scale campaign of the Palestinians, we cannot continue to just buy time. We need to be proactive, and we have to decide what we want, whether we want in the next coming years a Yom Kippur scenario where we are completely surprised and attacked on multiple areas, Iran and Palestinians and mixed cities and all of that. We saw it last year on a small scale. It can get much bigger. Or we want a 6-day war where we are proactive. We are the ones who shape our own future. Now, we prepared a very, very in-depth assessment of every aspect of what I talked now, and what we prepared is going to be presented in the coming months to all the leaders of Israel, to all the major parties, to the president, to the chief of staff, to the chief of police, and so on. We are going, all our many generals and researchers, we are meeting with everybody and talking exactly about what I'm saying now. Right. Understanding what is happening, understanding the threats and how they're going to affect us in the long term, and taking responsibility for our future, for our security and prosperity, and being proactive. Now, there are many ways of being proactive, and you can decide first to deal with the Negev, or maybe first to deal with Hamas, or maybe first to deal with Iran. There are many ways in which you can start being proactive, but we need to do something. We cannot just sit and wait until something happens.
I remember when Ariel Sharon was the prime minister, and before he became prime minister, there was a major upsurge in terrorist attacks going on. And then he sent the troops into throughout Judea and Samaria, and it seemed like he broke the back of Hamas, and he took actions against leaders of Hamas in Gaza. It doesn't seem like we have that kind of resolve from, well, certainly this government doesn't have that kind of resolve to do anything like that. What kind of proactive steps would you like to see a future government take, or the army take anyways?
Well, first of all, we need to understand that the internal security threats of Israel are the most important to deal with first. So we need to build a huge national guard. Right. We have been advocating for that in the last year constantly. And finally, this government decided to start to do something about it. And they budgeted the first brigade for the border patrol. And then happened something really interesting. They wanted to recruit very fast people for this new brigade. And the chief of the border patrol, General Amir Cohen, came to me and said, listen, Amir, we want to do this fast. We think that you guys in IDSF, in Abitchonistim, which is called in Hebrew, can do it faster than us. Can you campaign for us and recruit for us the people? And this is what we did. In 2 weeks, we recruited 1,400 volunteers who are also going to be reserved in Border Patrol. And in this way, we helped building the starting of building of this new national brigade. And because it was so successful, we are going immediately to start recruiting the next 2 brigades. But this is still small. We need something like 100,000 people defending Israel in the case of an Arab uprising, as we saw last year. So this is the process, and we want to see it accelerating. We expect the next government to accelerate this buildup of force. One thing. The other thing is understanding that the grabbing of land is the biggest threat Israel is facing, and acting, stopping this and reversing the situation. Now we know that if you go and take Bedouins now after from the land they illegally possessed, this might create friction. This might create fight, and we're saying, okay, for the land, we'll fight. And I think the more resolute the government will be, the less fight there will be. I mean, if they see that we are meaning and we are doing what we mean, and if needed, we are even willing to bring the army for that, then I know that this mentality, they understand that we are serious and we will be able to achieve our goals. The other thing is, there is a discussion now about Iran. We completely reject any going back to the JCPOA. The JCPOA is a disaster.
Right.
And I want to explain why. The first reason is that going back to the JCPOA means relieving sanctions. If sanctions will be relieved, the Iranians will be able immediately to invest tens of billions of dollars in the buildup of the forces around Israel. This will end up with a big war. Think about it. Israel is getting aid from the states, $3 billion a year. The Iranians will be able to invest in a short time tens of billions of dollars. We won't be able to catch up with this buildup of force. And it will bring them very fast to an ability to attack. The second reason is that this agreement basically says that when it's finished, it has a sunset, the Iranians will be able to have as many enriched uranium as they want, meaning they will be able to have 100 atomic bombs. Now, this will create a situation where all the states in the Middle East will move towards having nuclear capabilities. The proliferation will be all over the place. This is not going to endanger just Israel. This would be a global threat. Today you have nuclear capabilities. Very few countries have it. If this goes into proliferation in this very unstable region of the Middle East, the world is not going to be a safe world. So this cannot happen. And the third thing is that if there is an international agreement with Iran, how can Israel attack against an international agreement? We won't have the legitimacy needed to do what we need to do. We need to destroy Iranians' capability.
Absolutely.
And the best scenario is not doing it by ourselves. We expect the United States of America to ally with us. It's not our problem, it's a global problem. Iran is a global threat. And we expect the administration to understand that.
Mm-hmm. You're in the United States right now. What kind of feel are you getting from American Jews regarding the Iranian deal that we're talking about?
So
They,
I
for the
said
most part,
something
were
about, before I talk
Mhm.
about American Jews, I want to say something about the Congress and
Yep.
Senate.
Yep.
We've met with many senators and congressmen, both Republican and Democratic. I feel that everybody is worried about Iran.
Okay.
And you know, even many Democratic congressmen and senators, in closed doors, when we talk, they say, guys, you know, you are right, and Iran is a big problem, and you Israelis do what you need to do. If you need to attack Iran, do it. Don't count on us. It's not happening at the moment, and it's sad to hear that, but you know, that is the reality. But I think that many congressmen and senators share the understanding that Iran is a huge threat and something needs to be done.
Okay.
Talking
So with
about the Jews, I think that many are worried about
Mhm.
what's going on inside Israel. You know, these terror attacks, this political instability we're having in the last 2 years. And you know, our message to our politicians, you know, we are not a political entity. We don't support any party,
right,
or
right,
but our message is a national security message and a Zionist message. And we are saying
right.
to the politicians, you have to understand that we are facing one of the most problematic times, very dangerous time for Israel. And in such times, people need to unite. All these inner fights, you know, yes, Bibi, no, Bibi, Lapid, whatever. It's irrelevant to reality. These guys are forgetting that there is a state, there is a nation, there are people to defend, and we cannot afford these fights. And I'm telling also to all the Jewish communities, listen, we Jews love to argue so much, you know, about Judea and Samaria, 2 states, not 2 states, and so on. It's completely irrelevant. The other side is talking about full destructions of the people of Israel. Nobody on the other side is talking about 2 states. Nobody in the BDS or in this international arena is talking about 2 states. This is a completely different reality that we are facing now. This is a full-scale campaign to destroy all of Israel. Now, there are many, I can tell you, you know, anybody who Googles my name will see that I deal a lot with solutions. I don't talk only about problems.
Right.
But when you want to address solutions in the long term, you need to do 2 things before. First of all, you need to understand who you are. We need to remember who we are. What is our vision? What is Zionism? What it means having a state for the Jewish people in the land of Israel. And you know, you don't need to give up your identity to try and solve a problem. You can be a proud Jew. You can love all of the land of Israel. You can love your history and heritage and everything, and still, you know, think about solutions. I do. And I'm a very proud Jew and Zionist. The other thing is, before you go and talk about solutions, you need to understand the problem. I don't think that many people understand really what the problem is. And you need also to be able to define very clearly what are the red lines. What are the red lines that without them, Israel will be in danger of existence, existential threat. So I can tell you, for example, that without the Jordan Valley, without full security in Judea and Samaria that is based on massive presence of Jews, there is no existence for the state of Israel, physically or spiritually. And then, if you understand that, you can say, okay, but you know, we have 2 million Palestinians in Judea and Samaria. What do you do? How do you solve this? And I can tell you there is 4 different solutions we can discuss maybe in depth in another opportunity that actually give a better solution than the current 2-state solution and enable Israel to exist. First and foremost, we want to exist before anything else.
Let me just ask you to go into this a little bit more. So, okay, so I was staying in Malay Damim, and right across the highway is an Arab town, Saya or whatever it's called. But there's these humongous signs that are in red and white. No Jews allowed. And it doesn't say it. It says no Israelis permitted. It's a danger to come in, and that's in other Arab towns in Judea and Samaria. The same thing. And I mean, I'm watching almost fires daily. I get all these different app messages, and that fires daily, terrorist attacks. The IDF is operating all over the place to stop this. Why are we such nice guys, period, that we're going to let them come into Israel proper and work? People who teach day and night to kill Jews and murder Jews and celebrate the terrorist attacks, yeah, we let them into work. They come into work, some of them, wearing these T-shirts with M16s. What is it with Jews? I mean, forget about ultimate solutions, but why are we such nice guys?
First of all, we're Jews. We are nice guys,
Okay.
We brought the 10 Commandments. We're good people.
Yeah, but I mean, the enemy is they're clear about what they want to do.
Yeah. I think that there's 2 sides to it. First of all, we need to stick to our values. This is our strengths. The other thing is we shouldn't be naive or stupid, and we have been many times naive and to such an extent that we got our people killed, like in Oslo. I think that knowing quite well the Palestinian arena, I can say that there are many Palestinians who want to make a living. They truly want to wake up in the morning and come and work and get a living. The leadership is terrible. In Israel, many people in the government and in the defense establishment, they look at the Palestinian Authority as a kind of saviors. And the Palestinian Authority is even worse than Hamas. It's terrible. It's more dangerous because Hamas, it's simple. They're enemies. But the worst enemy is enemies like snakes. They behave like friends, but they're actually pushing to your destruction.
Yeah.
And the Palestinian Authority is very dangerous, and this is why we are calling for moving them. They are corrupted. The Palestinians themselves hate them. They're bad for the Palestinians and they're bad for the Israelis. And I think that, people who say, it's either the Palestinian Authority, what can you do? We'll have Hamas. We are saying no. There is local leadership in Judea and Samaria. Right. This Palestinian Authority, it's terrorists we brought from Tunis to rule local Arabs. And these Arabs, at the time, they accepted it. Now they're fed up with it. They want to go back to their old structure, tribes, Hamulas, like the United Arab Emirates. And we should think new ideas. It amazes me. I'm now in California, Silicon Valley, center of innovation. Okay. And today everybody talks about innovation and how you need to think always in an innovative way because technology is changing and so on. It's true. But also reality is changing at an amazing pace. I mean, think about what happened to this world just in the last 10 years. In the last 2 years, the world is changing really fast. And I'm asking myself, if the world is changing so fast, the Middle East has completely changed. How come people are still stuck with ideas that people brought 80 years ago which never worked, and people are stuck in the same ideas. Why aren't people thinking an innovative way about new solutions, new ideas? So this is what we are trying to do. We are bringing new, out-of-the-box solutions which are viable, which are relevant to to today's reality, not to the pill convention in 1936, 37. You know,
Right.
it's amazing when it comes to politics how people are stuck with really irrelevant old ideas.
Well, Israel is emerging, it seems, to be a superpower in the Middle East. The energy deal that was just struck, the gas deal, that's unbelievable. Who would have thought about that a number of years ago? And who would have thought that there's going to be this war with Russia and the Ukraine, that all of a sudden Israel emerges as the savior for the European Union, for Europe. Not only for energy, not only for gas, but they want our technology. They want Israel's technology in order for food, and more than that. So Israel's emerging as a Middle East superpower. In terms of military technology as well, Israel's like a world leader. You mentioned the aid that the United States gives to Israel, about 3.5 billion a year, something like that. And by the way, it's not exactly, I'm not looking to try to correct you or anything. I just wanted to put some context there, that it's not aid, it's really cooperation agreements that Israel has, that we have the technology to expand on it, to share Israel's knowledge, the technology. So there's a necessity for Israel. But the GDP in Israel right now, they say by the end of this year, Israel could be knocking on the door of about approximately $500 billion GDP. So right now it's about 450 billion, something like that. So the aid, if you even want to call it aid or mutual agreement, but it works out to about 3.5 billion, is not even 1%. At one time, the aid from the United States a number of years ago was over 10%. I'm wondering if Israeli Jews will eventually emerge to recognize how strong and what kind of a superpower Israel is, so that the conversations they have with world leaders is not sort of like a second class looking up, almost like begging for your support, but that we could set the tone, the direction. Is there like a change of thinking you see happening, or how do you see it emerging?
I think that first of all, what you said is right. Israel is getting very strong in many fields. The war in Ukraine has affected a lot the relationship between Israel and Europe, in the sense that the Europeans suddenly realize that actually, Instagram hasn't changed human nature. Amazing. Human nature has remained the same. And they understand that big wars can happen, and they need to be ready. And they pretty much rely on Israeli know-how, technology, and so on. And now they need, they want to be less reliant on Russia, talking about gas. And Israel has huge reserves of gas. So, they want to import gas from Israel. And this is a very big deal. It strengthens Israel. But Israel needs to know how to leverage this.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, we don't do it enough. I mean, if they are dependent on us, okay, we have some demands too, stop funding all this takeover of land, stop pestering us about our towns in Judea and Samaria, or even in the Negev and so on. I mean, we have a lot of things we can demand.
Right.
And we're not doing enough. We're not doing enough. We're not proud enough. We're not insisting enough on our interests. And in this world, if you don't respect yourself, nobody will respect you. You need to respect yourself, first of all. And the world is all about interest. They have interest, Very good. We have interests as well. And we need to know how to leverage them. This is something I'm expecting from the next government, to be more resolute when it comes to Israel's national security and interests, and use the strengths we have to benefit Israel.
Right.
Just as we did with the Abraham Accords. I mean, the Sunni Arab world is petrified by Iran. They understand they need Israel. And we managed, together with the former American administration, to achieve this peace deal, these economical deals, and so on, because there was a clear interest. They needed us. We wanted to expand our relations in the Middle East, and we did that. Now, talking about the aid we're getting from the US, first of all, the US is getting huge benefits from that. Okay, huge, much bigger than than the amount of money we're getting. And because it's not a significant part of our economy anymore, it raises a question in the very long term, really, if we need to continue this kind of relationship or change it. Build a very in-depth cooperation with the US, because we are allies, but not based on aid, because when you get money as aid, you become dependent in many ways.
Right.
It takes something from the sovereignty. We can get much more money and be much less dependent and build a different kind of relationship. And I think we should be looking at that. It's time for Israel to look again. And I'm not saying it because I think we should diminish the relations. On the contrary, we should deepen the relations, but in a different way. In a completely different way. We are doing that with other countries, and this can be in the long term very beneficial for Israel.
Do you see relations blossoming between Saudi Arabia and Israel?
I don't know if blossoming is the right
word. Or coming to, well, whatever the term would
but
be.
we have strong common interests. And I think that definitely when we look at the possibility of an agreement with Iran and Iran moving forward with their nuclear plans and so on, definitely it brings Israel and Saudi Arabia closer. We have been in good relations for many years now, but I think there is inner politics in Saudi Arabia that create the reality where it's not moving the way it did with the Gulf states and so on. So maybe they need a bit more time, but I think that eventually it will probably normalize the relations.
Just before the Abraham Accords, Jared Kushner, he initiated some kind of an economic summit that included Arab countries and also included, like you were alluding to, leaders of various Arab tribes in Judea and Samaria. And there were a number of them that came forward that wanted to learn how to prosper and make deals and so on and so forth. Now, the PA, Palestinian Authority, jailed many of those Arab tribal leaders that participated. But I think that's what you were getting at, looking at alternative leadership, Arab alternative leadership in Judea and Samaria. Am I correct with that?
Yeah, definitely. One of my friends from Hebron, Jabri family, attended this summit. And because they are very strong and also very well armed tribe in Hebron, the Palestinian Authority didn't do anything, didn't arrest him. But definitely there is leadership that is ready to step forward and replace this corrupt and terrorist entity, the Palestinian Authority.
Absolutely. think we got a short video to show before we wrap it up, but we got a video about, there was a rally today on the Temple Mount, a Hamas rally on the Temple Mount. Now, I remember when I was there, I mean, I just came back about 10 days ago, and I'll go back in September, but I remember even on Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, that they had Hamas rallies on the Temple Mount, and they're waving Hamas flags, and they're chanting Khyber Carver, Jews, we're coming for you, the armies of Muhammad. Let's take a look at this short clip, and then I want to hear your background on that. Status quo.
Well, I think that the Hamas understand what the Ben Gurion understood, that Jerusalem, especially the Temple Mount, is the heart and the soul of the Jewish people. If you manage to kill the heart and the soul, the body will die afterwards. So this is why Hamas is targeting Temple Mount. And it's clear, I talked about it in the Knesset not long ago, that Israel needs to understand that Hamas shifted the fight from fighting from Gaza to mobilizing Palestinians in Judea and Samaria and in Jerusalem to attack, and protest and so on in the Temple Mount. And our answer will be really simple. Raise our flags, as we did in the last amazing parade in Jerusalem's Day.
I was there.
Yeah, me too. It was amazing. Yeah. I think it was the biggest one ever.
Incredible. Yeah. I don't even know how many people were there. When we were leaving from the Kotel to go through the Jewish quarter to make it back to the Jaffa Gate to get to the Mamilla Mall. And we were like packed like sardines going through the Jewish quarter. It was incredible. There must have been over 100,000 Jews.
Definitely.
Unreal.
This is the answer, respecting our sovereignty and maintaining law and order on Temple Mount. I mean, imagine if some people would riot in the Vatican or any other place. They would get arrested.
Right.
So, law and order, that's it. And sovereignty. It's our nation, it's our land. And, we need to enable freedom of prayer for people who actually come to pray, not for people who come to throw stones and Molotovs and shout that Israel should be destroyed.
Right. 100%. Okay. Amir, Brigadier General Amir Avivi, listen, thank you very much for being with us. We want to have you on many more times going forward. The issues are so important. We're living in historic times right now. Elections are coming up. The issues are whether an Israeli state, in quotations, or a Jewish state. There is a difference. It's important to have a Jewish state. We waited 2,000 years. And, the debate is going on right now. Final word that you could leave our viewers and those who are going to share this before we sign off. What could you say?
Yes, I want to say that in all this fight against anti-Semitism, the most important thing in this fight is working on our own education and identity and prowess, because this is the key issue. The key issue is our inner strengths. More than we need to deal with them, We need to really be focused on ourselves and strengthen our identity, our connection, our friendship and togetherness. We have to unite as people and remember that we have enough enemies around us, but only one Jewish nation and one Jewish state. And this is what we should be focusing on.
I see in Israel, I feel when I'm in Israel in the past 2.5, 3 months that I was there, that I feel Judaism is different in Israel. Just in the air, just being amongst Jews, the synagogues I go to in Israel, it's totally different. And when I have just gone back here and even attending whatever synagogue here, the gap is so wide, so different, and it's so, as a Jew, it's so fulfilling and purposeful to be in Israel. The connection between the Jewish people, the Torah, and the land of Israel, all those three go together. And, if you're in Canada, you're not going to experience that. You're in the United States, you're not going to experience that. In Europe, you're not going to experience that. But in Israel, and it's a thriving economy. And there are so many places in Israel that, people can't afford. Okay, so Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or Herzliya, places like that. There's many communities, many cities in Israel that are very affordable for those who think that it's out of range. It really isn't. There's no excuses anymore. And today we learned through the corona how to make do also that a lot of businesses could operate remotely as well. So
yeah,
I think
we're a small country. You can drive anywhere. It's not Canada, it's small.
Right.
No, but you're right. The sense of, anywhere you go in Israel, you feel inside your soul. You feel happy. It's happiness, and,
Yes.
and more than anything, you feel that you care. You're in a
Yes.
place you actually care about. It's home.
Yes, absolutely, and it's one Jew family.
Definitely.
Yeah. Amir, thank you very much for joining us. We'll have you on some more, and it's a pleasure. Maybe when I get back to Israel, I'll meet you in Israel. That'll be good.
Oh, that would be lovely. Sure.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And,
thank you, man.
Okay,
Thank
and I guess we'll end with a song and Hatikva, and thank you. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us, watching the show. Please share this on your different platforms that you're with. We'll reach a lot more people and make a difference. And that's what we want to do. And that's the purpose of the show, to make a difference, to fight back using social media, to get the truth out there, and to convince Jews and get Jews to think differently about Israel and their responsibilities to the Jewish people and to the state of Israel. It's our one state. This is historic times. After 2,000 years, who would think that there are now over 7 million Jews living in Israel? The majority of Jews in the world live in Israel today. The majority of Jews in the world live in Israel today. That's historic. You didn't have that during the Second Temple period of time. This is historic. These are historic times. And the state is thriving. And it can be better. And it wants to be better. And Jews always want to be better. And that's what it's all about. And you could only be better in Israel. While you're not in Israel, help Israel in any way you can. Fight against the BDS. The fight is real. The anti-Semitic levels of these organizations, they're very clear. There is no two-state solution. They don't believe in that. They make it very clear. They want Israel, the entire state, destroyed. All of it destroyed. What they would do after that, I've even seen some presentations by some BDS leaders who spoke at Al-Quds Day events. And they said, what are we going to do after we destroy Israel? Like, they don't even know what they're going to do with their lives. They're just focused on killing Jews. We're not rolling over. It's not going to be a second Auschwitz. Thank God we have brave Jews in the IDF. And again, we have Jews contributing in so many different ways in the state of Israel. And that's our future. That's our future. So if we have a song to conclude with,
of course, we'll have a song. We'll do one song before
doctrines.
Tikva. I thought also would be appropriate for those who think it's difficult to make Aliyah or dual citizenship. Just they make it so easy. Just go to Nefesh B'Nefesh. They'll help you do all the paperwork, everything you need to do. If you're looking for work, get a job there, to move there. It's nbn.org.il. Just go, just for curiosity, go visit them, see what they have to offer you. And with that in mind, let's play a little song before we actually go and play Hatikva. Speaking of Aliyah.
Left it all to be with you. Distant dreams have now come true. Walk the streets of legends told. We've come home. We've come home. We've come home. And we'll never stand alone. After 2,000 years, we are home. Not a native of this land, bring me up and take my hand. Sapphire seas and golden sand, a place called home. We've come home, we've come home to a land of our own. After 2,000 years, we are home. זאת ארצי מולדתי, על אדמתי צעדתי, עברי עתידי, זה ביתי. We come home, we come home, and we'll never stand alone. After 2,000 years, we are home. We come home, we come home to a land of our own. After 2,000 years, we are home. After 2,000 years, we are home. Shalom.